Welcome to Rethink Your Legacy. This is Francisco Servent. This is a conversation designed to help you live out your family values before you leave this world. I'm attorney Francisco Servent, your host of the show. You know, today we are staring down the start of school and it's back to school time. And you know what? I think grandparents should have a say. I think you should speak out about all of this back to school stuff. I think grandparents, honestly, should speak up about back to school stuff and other important life decisions especially during chaotic times like this. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, there's just so much advice and wisdom and experience that we just don't take advantage of. Honestly, we don't. There's a lot of amazingly smart people who've been through so many things, and we just want to reinvent the wheel a lot of times. I think we should do that. I think we should do this completely differently. I think we should listen to those who've been through scary things before, especially right now when we're hearing so many scary things about COVID and race relations and all of the big issues that we're facing right now in this world. Our little kids are going through life for the first time. And they're like, I can't go back to school with my friends, my own kids. You know, we have 4 kids. They're dying to go back to school. And as soon as our school for them said, yeah, you guys are going to get to go back to school and you can pick either a virtual option or you can pick a in-class option, it seemed like the next day Governor Ducey announced that schools aren't starting in-person school until August 17th. And it was just a huge blow to them. So what we're going to talk about is what we can do to capture the wisdom and experience of the people who've been through tough times before. Because in all reality, if we look at, I'm 40, about to turn 41. If we look at the people who've come before us, right? Our parents' generation, even their parents' generation, they've been through, we think we're going through hard times right now. Oh my gosh. I just grabbed a few examples here. 1950s. I'm not going to claim that this is everything big that happened in the 50s. Don't try to allege that against me. But I tried to pull up some things that were really big that did happen in each of these decades. And I look back, 1950, the Korean War began. Oh my gosh, right? There was a failed assassination attempt on a president, President Truman. Oh my gosh, like they actually tried to assassinate him. Something good. I Love Lucy started. Anybody watch that show? I didn't really watch it growing up. My wife, she loved it. A humongous Supreme Court case decision, Brown v. Board of Education, ended the separation of schools. The Civil Rights Act was passed in 1957. And in the later half of 1950s, the Cuban Revolution, that started a whole series of events. Then in the 1960s, Kennedy elected president, enter, the start of the Cold War and all the nuclear threat, people building bomb shelters in their backyard, bomb shelters. Yeah, we see the cool TV shows, right? The preppers and that kind of stuff. But do you personally know anybody who's got a bomb shelter in their backyard? This is when 1960s, the Berlin crisis started, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam War, obviously. And then we actually had a president actually assassinated. President Kennedy was assassinated. He was murdered. He was killed. Our president, right? Medicare was started. The Miranda rights, which sometimes it feels like that's been around forever. Miranda rights, the case came down and established those rights. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And then Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. And Sesame Street started. I remember watching Sesame Street growing up. Then the 1970s, we had President Nixon. The microprocessor was invented. Cool, right? The start of the computing world. Watergate scandal, another giant Supreme Court case, Roe v. Wade. Microsoft was founded. President Carter was elected. Apple was then founded. And then the 3 Mile Island meltdown. Holy cow, that was scary. 1980s, President Reagan, an actor, elected to be president. AIDS was discovered. That was a giant scare for a lot of people. You might remember the terrorist explosion in Beirut. 1980s is when they discovered that there was a hole in the ozone layer. That might be kind of scary. Think about that. You discover there's a hole in this shell that's protecting us from the sun and from who knows what, right? The meltdown at Chernobyl. Oh my gosh. If you haven't watched that miniseries on, I think it's on Netflix, that series is incredible. What a disaster that was. I mean, it literally threatened the safety of the entire world. The terrorist explosion on the Pan Am airline, the Berlin Wall was torn down, the Tiananmen slaughter, Exxon Valdez oil spill. These are massive, massive things that that came crashing down. And you know what? We've got parents and grandparents and even great-grandparents who made it through these times by living out their values. And we have to. I think we must turn to them and listen just with open ears, open hearts. Now, if you're struggling with something right now, you know we do estate planning, we do probate, we help families either take care of their elderly parents or go through the process of winding up their affairs if they passed away. If you're in one of those situations right now, give our office a call. We'll be happy to help. 480-750-7788, or jump on our website, radio.keystonelawfirm.com. Or look, on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to shoot us a message or a comment and we'll get back to you. On our website there, radio.keystonelawfirm.com, this week's checklist is called How to Discuss Tough but Important Topics with Your Family. We got to do it, right? These are tough things. We also help with the planning side. If you want to get ahead of this and protect your family from these nightmares, give us a call and we'll be happy to help. Now, you've all heard that Governor Ducey ordered that schools won't start in person until August 17th. Now, my kids, they were just devastated. They were just completely devastated when this happened. Back when schools shut down in March. I mean, here we are, right? It's school's supposed to be starting again, and our kids have been out of school for months and months and months. They are literally going bored, like they're just bored out of their minds. And when Governor Ducey ordered that schools won't start in person until August 17th, my kids their spirits were crushed. And they, I think more than anything, it wasn't the realization that school won't start until the 17th. It was that they can move the line anytime they want to. That, I think, was the real unfortunate lesson that they learned. Is that those who are in power, that the government system, there's not really any recourse. They can move the line back anytime they want to. And if you've ever been in a period of life, I mean, we're in that right now for some people, where you just feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. One of my friends just told me this week, we can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that just means we need to turn a light on. We need to light a candle where we are. And my kids right now are struggling with the fact that there's no light at the end of this tunnel. And as soon as they see a glimmer of light, it just gets ripped away, and the government just takes it right back from them. And that's the struggle. This creates a lot of stress in our lives. My kids have never been through this before. I can't say I've ever been through a pandemic of this magnitude before. I'm 40. I've been through a whole bunch of them. I've heard about them. I've seen, countries shut down. I've seen, the consequences of them. But I feel like this one is getting all kinds of extra attention that I haven't seen happen before. And, so it's a lot. I think it is different. But you know what? If we look back to our parents and our grandparents, we can learn from what they've been through. So if you're going through something tough, our office would be glad to help, either put you in a resource or bring you in for an appointment. The first thing we do with new clients is called a discovery hour. And that's just a really no pressure, just a relaxed appointment where you get to sit down with someone on my team and do three things. You talk about, what's going on? What are the issues? What's happening? And then, help us understand, what are your goals? How do you want this to play out? Because so often lawyers will just drag clients through a nightmare process without the clients going, this isn't even what I wanted. So you spend a few minutes making sure we know what your goals are, and then we'll map out and lay out what options you have. If you want to talk about wills or trusts or estate planning or anything related to guardianships, probates, protecting your assets, anything on those lines, we'd be happy to help. 480-750-7788 is the phone number, or jump on our website, radio.keystonelawfirm.com. Or shoot us an email, radio@keystonelawfirm.com, and we'd be happy to get back to you and get you the help you need. And welcome back to Rethink Your Legacy. This is Francisco Servent, your attorney and problem solver at law. Today, we are talking about why I think grandparents should have a say in this whole going back to school situation. It's completely new. I mean, I've only had kids, my oldest are almost 13, but even in my own childhood, I can't remember in Arizona ever a year where they canceled school or they said, you're all doing school from home. I mean, that just not, it's never been my experience. So this is brand new for all of us. So I'm kind of turning back to people who have been through tough times before. And you know what? I really do think that we need to look at our parents, our grandparents, or at least people of that generation, to see what did they do? What did they do during tough times? Not necessarily that they faced exactly the same situation, but because you develop a muscle, you develop a skill of how to get through it. And if you've been through any tough time before, you know that makes you stronger to get through other tough times that are different, but closely related. And I was just looking back. I read off some of the things that our parents and grandparents have been through, but then I was looking back at what other pandemics there have been. I went to Wikipedia to try to find a list of them. I mean, it's just insane. The list, there's like 10 different pandemics every single year. So I'm not even sure how to read this off to you, but 2019, there's giant measles outbreaks everywhere. 2018, there's I don't even know, Nipah virus infection. 2017, there's dengue fever and cholera are exploding. In 2015, influenza H1N1. In 2014, I don't even know what that is. In 2014, the bubonic plague actually erupted. Oh my gosh, right? 2013 to 2019, the avian flu. Ugh, right? Ebola, 2013 to 2016. Dengue fever, yellow fever. I mean, geez, all these things are things I didn't know happened this often. H1N1 again. I mean, these things, bubonic plague again, 2008. Oh my gosh. It's not the first time we've faced a pandemic, okay? I hope we can all recognize the truth of that. And if we can recognize the truth of that, then that lets our brain come to this with a much different kind of criteria. Then we can say, okay, we have been through something like this, maybe not exactly the same, but something like this before. What did we do then? And let's learn from that. Let's see, what did we do that worked, right? If you've been listening, I talk about my grandpa's book, A Gathering of Tales. My grandpa was born in western Nebraska, grew up on a farm, fought in the war, and then raised my mom and my uncle. Before he passed away, he wrote out almost 200 pages of short stories of his life. And I went back and found maybe one of the scariest ones for me, honestly. He wrote one little chapter, and it's called "It Was a Very Bad Year." And I look around what's happening in our country right now. I look around what's happening with businesses and people losing their jobs and the number of people who are unemployed. And it can bring me down. But I have to remember that this is not the first time these things have happened, that these struggles have had to be, that they've been faced. You know, I look back, I mean, Grandpa Baker, it was a very bad year. He talks about on the farm, not only was, you know, he says the worst year was 1932 for him, for their family. He said, quote, the economy had gone into depression hell, taking down most of the banks, and there was no such thing as deposit insurance. People right and left, including my mom and dad, lost their life savings, and many were losing their homes and farms. Fear and despair everywhere. And then Mother Nature had decided to pile it on just to be sure no one would forget. And then he goes on and tells the story about how that year was one of the driest years they'd ever had. And they didn't have enough grass to grow, to harvest, to feed their cattle. And how he tells a story about how his dad had to reinvent their mowing machine, which was something that the horses dragged, in order to pick up the smaller, tinier blades of grass, which were normally big, long blades of grass, but were now the size of toothpicks, so that they could scrape something together to feed their cattle. And, you know, I read that and I think, wow, oh my gosh, do we really have it that bad? Even in this moment of really, for some people, absolute despair. I don't know. I didn't live back then. I live right now. And I just want you to know, if you're going through something right now, taking care of an elderly parent, or you just want to avoid these giant problems that can come by not having your affairs organized, give us a call. Our office phone number is 480-750-7788, or you can jump on our website, radio.keystonelawfirm.com. And actually this week, we've got a free checklist for you on how to discuss these tough but important topics with your family. I do think people of that, my grandpa's generation and of my parents' generation, I think you should give us your experience. I think you should share your wisdom with us. I don't think you should keep it to yourself. Now, I get that some families don't have that kind of relationship and it just wouldn't be welcomed, or maybe you just don't have a relationship at all. If that's the case, you have a relationship with someone. You've been through some tough times, and you know what? Sharing your stories is how you change lives. That's how you change lives. So now my grandpa, in this long book, Gathering of Tales, he actually gave me a framework for how to share your advice without offending or coming across as presumptuous or hurting the relationship that you have with the other person. But before we get to that, I really want to know, do you guys think that, as I was thinking about this topic, do you think that parents are going to be forced to decide between, I mean, there's a lot of parents out there where both are working or they're single parents and they can't stay home and do half homeschool, right? I mean, they have to work from home maybe, but they can't also get their job done and be the homeschooling parent at the same time. Do you think there's going to be parents out there who are literally they're going to feel forced to choose between, I have to work or I have to give my kids education? Because I'm not going to be surprised if, and please, Governor Ducey, if you hear this, this is not a suggestion. Dude, please don't do this. But I just wouldn't be surprised if the government came out and completely shut down in-person school this year. I mean, talk about devastating the economy, devastating families, completely destroying the experience of children's lives who get to have the only social circle that they have. Now, I get there's so many things to take into consideration about, you know, the safety of our teachers and how it would even work. I get it. And I know that's a hard problem to solve. But if there's any problems that we expect our governments to solve, it's that kind of a problem. I don't think it's appropriate to just say we're going to cancel it. That's lazy governing. And if that's what you do, Governor Ducey, you're being lazy. Figure it out. Keep our teachers safe, yes. Keep our kids safe, yes. But the cure cannot be worse. It can't be worse. And I just fear the number of problems that are going to arise from this generation of kids who are going to miss school for a year. Now, we're talking about how you as a grandparent should have input on this decision. Should you step up and just provide babysitting for the kids? Should you step up and become the homeschooling teacher so that that the grandkids' parents can keep working? These are things we're talking about. If you're a grandparent and you need to have a tough conversation with your family, this is the time to call. Let us help you, guide you through that, okay? Give us a call, 480-750-7788 or radio.keystonelawfirm.com. And you can download this week's checklist. It'll tell you how to have these tough conversations about this stuff. But this framework is going to work for any tough conversation that you need to have. So check that out. You can always give us a call if you need help with your will, your trust, or if you're in a probate or a guardianship matter. Our firm would be happy to help, at least point you in the right direction. That phone number is 480-750-7788. Or you can jump on our Facebook page and give us a comment or shoot us a message over Messenger, and we'll be happy to get back to you right away. Now, next thing, come back because I'm going to give you a lesson on how to have this conversation. Welcome back to Rethink Your Legacy. Today, I'm talking about why I think grandparents should have a say in this whole back to school situation. It's a tough time right now. And what I want to hit on right now is how to actually share your advice without destroying your relationship. This is a thing that us lawyers we struggle with. We want to give everybody advice. We want to tell everybody how to live their life. And if you know a lawyer in your life, you might have experienced that. And that doesn't go over too well. So it's a delicate thing. I get that. There's just problems with trying to give advice. And the biggest problem is when it's unsolicited. When it's just, you know what, I'm just going to throw it out here and give you I'm not going to give you, I'm going to tell you what to do. That's the problem. That is, I think, the biggest problem. So I'm going to share with you the framework that Grandpa Baker, my grandpa, used in his book, A Gathering of Tales, because there are so many stories. There's so many nuggets of advice. There's so many giant life lessons in there that that don't offend you, that don't come across as somebody commanding you to do something. Because these are the big problems. Number one is that when you're just giving advice, it's really hard to not be demeaning. Okay? When you share advice with somebody, they've obviously already thought through the issue. Okay? Otherwise you wouldn't be having that conversation. So first, it's just easy by giving advice to demean them. And as soon as somebody feels like they're being demeaned, then it shows you're communicating that you don't think they're smart enough. You may not be trying to communicate that, but what they're feeling is that, wow, you think I'm not smart enough to have thought this through already. And instantly, as soon as somebody's brain goes to that, because that's how we're just hardwired, a lot of us are anyway, then the filter turns on and they're not going to hear anything you say. And you've probably experienced that, right? I'm sure you have. You've experienced that. The second problem is that people's defenses go up as soon as they feel like somebody's trying to boss them around. If they feel, and again, this isn't on you if they feel that way, but if they feel like they're being bossed around, their defenses go up and they're just going to immediately be resistant to anything you suggest. So your advice, it might come across as you trying to boss them around. The third big problem with advice is that advice, it skips the whole critical thinking process, right? Think about it. If I just walked up to you on the street randomly, we've done what we do thousands of times. I've helped thousands of families. But if I just walked up to you and I said, you should do a trust, you should do a will, you should do a power of attorney, you should do some tax planning, you should do this and that and the other, you immediately, your defenses go up. Who are you? I don't even know you. I don't trust you. Leave me alone, right? That would be really confrontational. No matter how nice I said those exact words, it skips past the whole critical thinking part of the equation. It's got to not do that, okay? The thinking process is what's critical there. Now, and then the other thing is when you throw advice at someone, again, if it's unsolicited, it forces them to simply stop exploring and respond. It just triggers something in us. I don't know if it's our fight or flight syndrome or what, but we just trigger a response. There's not a conversation about it. It just forces us to respond. And we all have, to some extent, the need to feel right about things. And when somebody gives us a piece of advice that contradicts what we're currently doing or what we're currently thinking, we immediately have to respond. And it's typically going to be a response to justify why I'm doing things the way I'm doing them. That's the big problem with giving advice, honestly. I mean, us lawyers, we have the advantage of somebody will call us, they'll call the office, they'll say, I have this problem or I have this opportunity, I want to take care of it, and I think you guys can help. And, then by the time they sit down with us, they have asked for our advice. The same thing is true in our family and personal relationships, right? It is going to be much more well received if it is sought after, right? Now, how do you get them to seek after it? Aha! That's what our checklist is this week. It's how to have these tough conversations without repelling them from the conversation. So jump on our website. It's radio.keystonelawfirm.com. And you can just download the checklist this week and it'll walk you through, right? That'll give you something tangible to hold on to so you can actually kind of practice the conversation a couple times in your head. You don't want this to hurt the relationship. You want this to help and nurture the relationship. Or you can call our office at 480-750-7788. And if you need help going through this conversation, just ask my team to send you that checklist. They'll be happy to send it to you and give you a call back first thing in the morning. The tricks that I learned from Grandpa Baker were that you can't give advice unless it's asked for. Okay, that's just a fundamental nature, unless you just want to be a talking head that nobody listens to. If you want to be somebody that people listen to, people in your family, people you care about and you love, then you can't just throw advice at them. That's just it's like a missile. It just, it's going to land where it lands. To get someone to understand your way of thinking is a completely different way to approach the process. So if you jump online and pull down our checklist for this week, you'll see the conversation starters and the tips on how to do this. Here are a couple of them. The first thing, which my grandpa just did a great job of, was to just share your experience. Share your own stories. The very first episode of Rethink Your Legacy, I shared the story with you guys about how when I was a teenager, I was a complete punk. I got into trouble. I landed me in handcuffs in the back of a police car. And you know what? I literally had to go sit in front of a judge and they declared me to be a juvenile delinquent. And that really crushed me. It crushed my family. That was a really, really low point in our life. But you know what happened? That low point, they always say, you can't get any lower. I don't know if I could have gotten lower. I didn't try. It was my low point because something triggered and I decided to set my life into a different direction. Going into a different direction at that point is what made all the difference for me. I now have a wife who's amazing. I have 4 kids that are just, they're just so amazingly, I work at Keystone Law Firm with 13 just awesome people that I love working with. I have a life that is so blessed, and we get to help hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients every single year. So that story, you might take some lessons out of that, right? Just share a story, share a struggle. That's the first big way to have this conversation. The second big way, which is hard, it's a lot harder than that, is to get curious about what they're doing. Get curious and only ask a lot of probing questions. If you dig in and ask a lot of probing questions, why would you do that? How is that going to work? What are you going to do if this happens? What's your plan if that happens? If all you're doing is asking questions, now they might get triggered by that. I have had that experience. But your questions only will, if you're truly committed to being curious for them and to helping them think this through, then your questions are going to help them answer questions they have in their mind that they probably need to answer. That's going to be well received if you do it with love. And that's all we're talking about, right? Doing all of this with the most care and compassion that you can put together. Now, so how does my firm help? Like I've told you before, we do wills and trust. We help people protect their families from fighting over all of their money. Right now, there are 14,000 new cases filed every year in probate. I don't want any of you guys to be in there. Most of those would surprise you. They're filed while parents are still alive. Yes, people are fighting over the money before they even have it. Ugh. If that's you, give us a call. We're happy to help. This is what we do all day, every day. If you want to avoid that mess, we are the only firm in Arizona that gives a no probate guarantee around our estate plans. The first thing we do is a discovery hour. It's a no pressure appointment for you to discuss your issues, what your goals are, and help you clearly see what options are relevant for you, whether you're in that messy situation already or you want to plan to avoid it. So call our office, 480-750-7788, or go to our website at radio.keystonelawfirm.com, or message us right here on Facebook. When this gets to Facebook, please message us. We will get right back to you. I'd love to be able to share you information about this so you can meet with somebody on my team and work through whatever's happening. Sometimes we just give you some resources. Sometimes we actually will need to help. So give us a call, 480-750-7788. Right after the break, we're going to dig in and I'm going to cover a couple very important but frequent questions that we get from our listeners. So we'll see you in just a minute. Welcome back to Rethink Your Legacy. This is Francisco Servent, attorney and problem solver at law. Today we've been digging in on the topic that I think grandparents should have a say in this whole back to school situation. It's a completely new school year. None of us have faced this before. So we might as well talk to some people who have who've been through some tough times. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from their experience. So jump on our website, radio.keystonelawfirm.com. We've got a great checklist for today about how to have these tough discussions with your family about back to school. Should grandparents volunteer to be babysitters so that mom and dad can work? Should grandparents act as the homeschooling teacher? Well, doesn't that put their health at risk? Does that put the kids' health at risk? Should mom or dad work from home so that they can also be the teacher? There's just so many confusing things to think about right now that my wife and I are struggling with. So we get a lot of questions about all these kinds of tough conversations. And one of the most common ones is what I want to address first. So if you have questions, right, submit them to us, radio.keystonelawfirm.com or radio@keystonelawfirm.com. Send it in by email. I'd be happy to answer questions on the air. The first question that we have for today is one that I think most people just completely go, man, it doesn't apply to me. It's, what is my estate? Do I even have an estate? No, I don't have an estate. And we get that all the time, actually, where I don't have an estate. I don't need estate planning. Okay, you're right. You don't have an estate. You have stuff. How about that? The law just simply calls it your estate. It's all your stuff. It's your bank accounts. It's your paycheck. It's your car. It's your clothes. It's your stuff in your house. It's your house. It's your business. It's whatever you have. It's all of your stuff. You have some stuff, then you have an estate planning. Maybe we should change the name to stuff planning because everybody's got some stuff. Well, what happens with your stuff? That's the key thing that we're dealing with at Keystone Law Firm is what do people need to do about their stuff? Because the big problem is that people end up fighting over this and it destroys relationships. We had a client whose mom passed away and him and his sister was very simple estate was split 50-50. That's what mom's will said. And as we're going through the process, the sister, for some reason, went and talked to a lawyer to say, hey, can you give me some advice and tell me if my brother's doing everything correctly? And of course, this is a probate lawyer what's their main goal? It's to get stuff tied up in probate, right? How do they make money? It's by, okay. Yes. So that lawyer ended up telling her all kinds of things, I'm sure, that turned that into a 2-year battle between them. Battle over nothing. It ended up with her getting less out of the estate than at the beginning what the brother was proposing, because the other lawyer did such a good audit that found out that the brother was actually getting less than the sister. He was proposing, being, more generous to her. Okay. I mean, that's fine. But that's the problem with the probate system. And now their relationship is completely forever changed. So we help families avoid that. And if you have any stuff, if you have an estate, you're going to be subject to probate. We get phone calls. We get 4 or 5 phone calls every single day of horror stories and nightmares where people did not plan their estate. Every day. Please get your stuff organized. Please get a will done. Get a trust done. A will doesn't avoid probate. A trust can avoid probate, though they don't always. Most of the nightmares we hear about, there was a will, there was a trust, but they were just old. They were outdated. They weren't kept up to date. And so we have something we call a trust care program. That's a long-term relationship so that you don't need your trust to work today. You need it to work someday in the future when you're gone. And we don't know when that day is. It's got to be current that day. And that's what we do. That's how we give a no probate guarantee. So check us out, 480-750-7788 if you need help with that, if you just want more information. Or go to our website, radio.keystonelawfirm.com, and download this week's checklist so you can learn how to have this tough conversation with your family. Maybe it's a tough conversation you need to have with your spouse. Guys, I'm gonna dig a little bit on you. I hear it more often from the men. They'll figure it out when I'm gone. You know what? I bet if we asked you a few questions about what's important to you in life, you wouldn't want them to have to go through that mess when you're gone. You would want them to be taken care of because you're taking care of them right now. So maybe this is a tough conversation that you, the wife, need to have with your husband. Or maybe it's a tough conversation that grandparents, you want to have with your kids. This will help you get through that. Now, switching gears back to our Q&A, our second question for today is more of a hypothetical. I'm going to make it a hypothetical because we're not going to reveal anybody's information, but that somebody submitted and I think is just a good example of that'll help some of you. We've been married for 28 years. Congratulations. My wife and I have been married. We just celebrated our 19th year anniversary. Super happy about that. And in this question, we have 2 adult kids. Our family's pretty simple. Do we need a will, or does everything go, to the spouse and to the kids automatically? You need something because it doesn't happen automatically. There are only 2 ways that things can happen, quote unquote, automatically. The first way is if, let me back up. There are 2 time periods you got to worry about. Or, I don't know, you don't need to worry. You need to know about. The first one is the one everyone knows about with what happens after we pass away, right? That's one of them. But the first one, the one that's before that, is what happens if we become incapacitated or disabled. We have a stroke, we have a heart attack, right? And we don't die, we just are in the hospital. We're sick, we're ill, we have dementia. That time period while we're alive is a bigger risk. Nothing happens automatically there. So yes, if you're a married couple and you have kids and you have a simple situation, you have stuff. It doesn't happen automatically. And yes, you need to get those all arranged. Now, our firm, I'm a big fan of revocable living trusts. And you can jump on our website to read all about it. We've got other shows where I've talked about in detail what those do for you, how to create one, the things to think about before you do it. So check that out. We've also got lots of good resources on our website about it. But I'm a big fan of trusts. I'm a big fan. It's a way to keep everything private and to keep it within your family and to let your family or those you trust really do what you think should happen, how you picture it going. Most people don't expect it to be a big nightmare after they pass away. They expect it's going to be simple. Unless you've done the job of administering someone's affairs before, you haven't experienced that. There's a lot of work to do. Having a trust that's kept up to date is the best way, in my experience, to make it as simple as possible for your family. Now, if you need help with that, give us a call. Be happy to see if we're a good fit. 480-750-7788. Or go to our website, radio.keystonelawfirm.com, and you can download this week's checklist. Remember, that checklist this week is how to have tough conversations with your family. This is going to be a tough conversation for some families, but you need to have it. You can't stick your head in the sand. We are people who have values. We have to live out those values. If we say we care about our loved ones, we need to act on that. And so I challenge you to do that. You'll also get all of the checklists from the prior episodes, and you can get access to listen to all the prior episodes as well. So give us a call, 480-750-7788. And see if you need help. We'd be happy to figure out what the best options are for you. That first appointment is called a discovery hour, and you'll meet with a member of my team to really just dig in, there's no pressure, and help figure out what your options are for your family. Now, if you need help with this or any topics, just give us a call. I want you to make sure you tune in, though, because guess what is going to happen? Next week, we are actually going to tackle something a little bit different. And what I want you to come back for is because we're probably going to be back to school, but it might be a giant mess. And I want to help you navigate that with your family. Everybody have a great week.